You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com.
Chris, I am a man of the people.
Yeah, I know that. You're very excited.
I am the voice of the voicelessness.
You got a lot of people that agreed with your rantings and your ravings on the last episode.
And you can't handle it. And you can't handle it
No.
can't
I can handle it.
Okay.
They're right now, in my opinion, looking at what people say and how people react to the show, I believe there is a large section of the Sox in the Basement listenership that is right with you, Dave, with the... You basically think it's all going to just be a complete crap show the entire off season. And then there are people like me who think you should get yourself a nice cup of hot herbal tea, maybe put like a heating blanket on, get underneath something comfortable, sit on your couch, look out into the sky, and contemplate the good things that you have in life, so you'd stop being so negative. I think we're split in the listenership.
I have many good things in life, Chris. I have many good things. You know what one of the good things in my life isn't, though? Chicago White Sox offseason.
Okay. All right. Before we get started, I do want to play my call of the year.
This guy is awesome.
My call of the year that came in the Sox in the Basement, and it starts off pretty much like any other call that we get, but there's a moment in there that I've now listened to it 3 or 4 times as I played it for people on my phone, and now I'm going to play it for you, where there's this moment where I laugh out loud. And everybody that I play it for does the exact same thing. Remember, you can always leave your comments, your questions. You can tell us what you think the Sox should do. You can spout off 708-459-8406, 708-459-8406. This came in after last week's show.
Guys, this is Pete from Chicago, listening to your podcast on this fine Wednesday morning, and I have to agree with Dave, not only because of the indisputable track record, but also a key thing to remember is comments that were made by Ivan Nova during the corporate podcast back in August, I believe it was, where he talked about how there were players who told him not to go to the White Sox, even though he was traded there. And frankly, why would a player such as Mad Bum want to sign with the White Sox, who haven't had a winning record since 2012, who don't know how to win, frankly, and are probably not going to be the top offer? If the Sox want to prove it, they need to go out and basically do a shock and awe campaign and make offers that blow the doors off, because there's a Sox suck tax that needs to be paid, where the only way they're going to get a premium talent is by paying the top dollar for that talent and outspending everyone else on that talent. And that's something that they have gone on record saying that they don't want to do. They don't want to set the market. That's the conundrum here. That's the problem. Thanks, guys. Love the show.
There's a Sox suck tax.
Thank you, Pete from Chicago.
Thanks, guys. Love the show.
Awesome. That's
Okay.
awesome.
All right. Before you get into what you're going to get into today, because you're ready to go,
You're going to love this.
let's just review a few things that have come out. The GM meetings are going on this week. Chris Zwick going to join us in just a few moments here on the program from the Baseball Writers Association of America and Yahoo Sports to talk. And also at the GM meetings, Kenny Williams immediately walks into a room, opens his mouth, pisses off all of White Soxdom by saying, "We're here for business as usual." Well, maybe more than usual. And everybody just loses it.
Now,
and I was one of them, like, stop talking. Stop talking and do something. Stop
Did you
talking.
see, Chris, now, like, to piggyback on that, our guy, James Fox, first of all, James, you're my guy now, man. You are now my spirit animal and my hero. So did you see the James Fox tweet after
James
that?
Fox, he's a
Fox.
White Sox beat reporter, writes for many publications. He's with Future Sox. I think he's joined up in a new one recently. He does the From the Sideline Sports. The guy's everywhere.
James Fox immediately. So Daryl Van Schewin, whatever, tweets that out, right? And James Fox replies, OFFS, right? And then he goes, I don't need to hear from Ken Williams until he's fitting free agents with White Sox uniforms at Guaranteed Rate Field. For once, I'd like these guys to stop talking about how active they'll be and just get the actual work done. To which Southside Hit Pen replies,
That's the other publication he's writing for.
White Sox 2020. Zip it till you fit it.
Right.
I love it.
Right. And yeah, I think everybody agrees. After what happened with Machado last year and being so bombastic telling us that they were going to go do it, sitting at Sox Fest and telling everybody basically the deal's done without saying it in so many words. But with all the wink, wink, nod, nod stuff and all the crap they were saying to people,
awful.
and then to drop the ball so terribly, just shut up. After screwing up the Jock Peterson thing, which they did, they want to blame White Sox
They're
Twitter
going to blame
for it.
us for that.
Let me tell you something right now. How does White Sox Twitter get a hold of the information if one of your guys isn't walking around at Sox Fest shooting his mouth off from your front office, telling all the people that are around that have blogs and podcasts and are writers for all these publications that Jock Peterson's done deal and going to be announced before the end of the weekend? They're sure of it. That was your ship that had the leak. It wasn't White Sox Twitter. So shut up. Shut up and have a good off season.
Hashtag prove it.
There are a couple of guys who have been linked to the White Sox here in just this first week. And we also, of course, are still waiting here in the next day or so while this show is out. Before the next show comes out, we're going to find out if Jose Abreu takes his guaranteed 1-year deal, his qualifying offer, which I think he should take. But that's a lot of money.
Yes.
He's not going to get that in a single year if he signs a multi-year deal. His market's going to be all dried up because the qualifying offer was attached to him by the White Sox. It'll be interesting to see what he does. But other guys that have been I've been kind of flipping through things. Guys that have been associated with the White Sox so far.
Okay.
I see a lot of Zach Wheeler buzz.
I've seen that.
There's
and
also-
I've got some things to say about that.
There's also the really weird quote that came out, or insider thing that came out. Jason Conander tweets out, the White Sox are prepared to forfeit their second-round pick because, of course, that would what you would have to do if you give out a contract to a guy with a qualifying offer, and they're interested in Wheeler or Odorizzi. Those are two very different guys. One's a front-end starter and one's a 4. Those are very, very different guys. I hope those are not the two guys that's like, well, if we don't get Wheeler, we want Odorizzi. No, you should be knocking on Mad Bum's door. There's about 3-4 other guys you could be knocking on their door before you get down to Odorizzi as the best pitcher that you're going to sign this offseason. The other guy that I keep hearing Mike Moustakas now getting mentioned.
That's, it's funny. Go ahead.
He had the 3.2 wins above replacement this past season, but let's not forget the season before that, he was a 0.4. That's really one of his best years ever, and I just don't get it. I've heard JD Martinez buzz like the Sox are still going to go out and try to trade for him. And that's for the same reason you don't trade for Mookie Betts. It's a 1-year deal, because he makes the majority of what's left in his 3-year deal this year in 2020, and then he can opt out again, and he will as a Boras client. You'll get 1 year of him. Scott Boras will screw you over, and you'll have given away prospects for JD Martinez, and you're not ready to win the World Series in 2020. You're just looking to compete. So I've heard that one bantied about as well. So those are some of the names that I'm hearing get attached to the White Sox. Oh, Nick Castellanos. My last thing before I let you jump into what you want to do today, and we also have Chris Zwick on the line. Okay, so Nick Castellanos. The White Sox supposedly very interested in making him a high priority, according to several tweets that were sent out by writers during this past week. We, the Sox in the Basement podcast, immediately responded to that saying, I'm not really so sure. Now, we've talked about and touched on it before, but I got challenged where people were like, well, prove it. Why wouldn't he hit a lot of home runs in the cell? Why would you think that the cell gives up a lot of home runs just like Wrigley? It's not about the ballpark giving up home runs. It's about the dimensions and what he likes to do. If you go and look at his spray chart, and you could see it, it's on one of our recent posts on the Sox in the Basement Twitter account at Sox in the Basement, but you can just look this up. Look at his spray chart for 2020. I went to Fangraphs to find this. Then go and find the dimensions for Wrigley, for Comerica in Detroit, where he started the season, and for Guaranteed Rate. He hits most of his home runs into the gaps in left center field and right center field. He had a lot of those go for flyouts or extra base hits, depending on wherever it landed in Comerica.
Because Comerica is an airport.
Okay.
But
they went out in Wrigley. at shorter distances when
Yes.
you look at a spray chart. So those are the Wrigley home runs. Fine. But now look at the alleys for those two ballparks and then look at the rate. The rate is actually deeper in the alleys than even Comerica. Comerica is deeper than Wrigley. The rate is deeper than Comerica. He is not a 25 to 30 home run hitter if he comes and plays in the cell. If I'm wrong and they sign him and I look stupid, I will at the end of the year eat crow. But I'm pretty sure I'm right on this one. We have joining us on the phone line this week, and it's a perfect time to have him on because one, the GM meetings are going on, and two, the Baseball Writers Association of America is doing all their voting, and he's a member. He also writes for Yahoo Sports. Chris Zwick, welcome back to the program. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm hoping that we see some free agent activity in the next few days, even though that seems unlikely, but at least we'll get some news out of the GM meeting. So at least we'll have baseball to talk about pretty soon.
So far as a White Sox fan, the initial news from the GM meetings is that Kenny Williams loves a microphone. He found one immediately and had to make a comment like, it's business as usual. Well, maybe more than usual. Way to put the pressure on yourself after you completely just fell apart in the Manny Machado thing last offseason and dragged your fan base for months and months through this, telling them, don't worry, we're getting him, and they didn't. And he shows up to the GM meetings and he can't wait to shoot his mouth off. Am I the only person that has a bad impression of him when it comes to that?
Well, I think in this instance, your impression is justified. I feel like especially, you hit it on the nail exactly. After last season, just all the talk about how they're really going to go in hard for premier free agent, which, wound up being Machado, and then just not landing him and the reports coming out about the structure of their offer, which was, I think, maybe more than $300 million, but that was based on a lot of incentives that Machado couldn't control, such as attendance. So, in the end, I can't blame Machado for taking an offer that he thought was maybe more realistic, that he'd get, the full amount and not have to depend on that type of thing. And I think for a team like the White Sox, especially last year and still going into this year, if they're going to go after a free agent of that caliber, which I'm not sure there really are many out there, maybe you could say there's one or two out there this year, you almost have to overpay at this point because you're not a premier destination. And the promise you're making to a free agent is that things are going to get better because you have a young core. And while the Sox do have a young, promising core, that, of course, is not guaranteed. So I think that's the kind of the situation they're in, is that they really have to go above and beyond with guaranteed money if they want to bring in somebody elite.
Chris, you're writing for Yahoo Sports. You're a BBWAA member. You've seen some off seasons, and you have a more national perspective. With this early stage of free agency, should a White Sox fan be concerned when he sees a report that a guy like, I don't know, let's just use a comparison. You got a Madison Bumgarner and a Zach Wheeler. These are two guys that you could argue the Sox, if they didn't get one, should at least be kicking the tires on the other one, because there's different tiers. There's about 3-4 guys in this tier and 3-4 guys in this tier. And when you see them zeroed in on one guy, but you haven't heard about them even talking to the other guy, is that because they're zeroed in and it's all or nothing on like 3-4 guys? Or is that because it's hard to figure out who's actually looking at certain players, and people and like fans shouldn't get too excited because the guy that they want is not attached yet to the White Sox, because he might become attached to them in about a month or so?
Right. Yeah. I think based on what we've seen the last few winters, first off, nothing moves fast anymore in free agency. So I wouldn't be surprised if we were once again waiting until January, February for major guys to sign. That just seems to be the way teams want to play things. They want to wait out free agents and hope that maybe guys get desperate and their prices come down. And that has worked the last few seasons with a few guys. Yasmani Grandal, Mike Moustakas have signed one-year deals worth far less than I think they should be valued at. But I think the difference again is that those players will sign with teams they think have a legitimate playoff shot. And I don't know if the White Sox can make that same argument to those types of players. So I think, in a roundabout way, or I guess to get back to kind of the first part of the question, I think it's important to kind of ask yourself why certain rumors leak, right? So we've heard the White Sox are interested in Wheeler. Well, where is that coming from? Is that coming directly from the White Sox? Is that coming from Wheeler's agent? Is he trying to drum up interest among a lot of teams and start a bidding war? Are the White Sox being completely honest when they say that to a reporter, knowing that that person's going to put that out there? So I can't give you a great definitive answer, but I would just ask people to think about that a little bit and kind of come to your own conclusion on why certain players get attached to certain teams.
Are there teams that handle things differently? Well, I know the answer is yes here, but I mean, do you get the feeling that there are different teams that handle rumors and off-season vastly differently from another organization? Like, are there just certain organizations you're always like, they play everything close to the vest, and then you're like, this other organization is like a ship with like 20 holes in the hull and it's leaking everywhere? I mean, like, do you get that feeling as a writer that like there's certain teams you could find out what's going on, and there's other teams you're like, yeah, no chance?
So yes and no. I mean, I think I can more give you teams where there's almost no chance. And Houston is notoriously tight-lipped and difficult to deal with. They're not going to tell you anything about their process or what they're doing. Honestly, I mean, the White Sox usually keep things fairly close to the vest. I don't think there are a lot of national reporters I trust with White Sox rumors. The one guy who gets a lot of stuff is Bob Nightingale, which is great sometimes and maybe less dependable other times. But I do think they do a fairly good job of playing things close to the vest. I think mostly if you're getting rumors at this point, it's probably coming from agents because it benefits them the most, right? To talk about what teams are on their player, to talk up their players. So generally, that's probably where a lot of these rumors are going to come from. And then obviously, you'll have some reporters who have connections with teams, but I think, yeah, in the specific case, like Houston, it's going to be tough to really get a lot out of. And the White Sox, you're going to have to really be trusting with who you get that information from.
It's interesting you just say that, and I hope that I want that to be true, because last year was weird. I remember I went to Sox Fest, and I'm sitting in Kitty O'Shea's, and there's a couple other guys that are, writers for the Sox or doing things that are around the Sox covering the team, and we knew on day one that the Sox felt like they had Jock Peterson in the bag, to the point where they were talking about it. Somebody on the team was talking so much that 2 or 3 different people in that bar were like, yeah, I heard that too. Like, it was like one of those things that was like moving through Sox Fest like it was going to be announced. And then like within a week, it was like, all you people gave it up and screwed up our deal. So right. I mean, like, I'm hoping that was the anomaly. And you're making me feel like that's an anomaly. Like, they normally don't screw up that badly, because somewhere along the line, they screwed up on that. All right, so before I let you go here, how long? I mean, White Sox fan, this is a crazy question. There's no way for you to know, but we just need comfort. We need somebody that's going to sit there and tell us it's going to be okay. How long do you think before we start to see the hot stove actually get hot, and that the Sox probably grab up somebody and add them onto their team? Like, are we waiting until 2020? You think something's going to happen here in the last month and a half of the year?
I have to think, based on the last 2 years, we're waiting for 2020. I think it's just going to be a miserable, slow winter again, and things always get quiet around mid-December because obviously everyone's ready to celebrate the holidays and not focused as much on baseball. And so I think January will roll around and we'll see the market move a little more. So I wouldn't necessarily be discouraged if the Sox don't make a signing this month or next month, just based on the state of free agency right now.
So you're telling me if I want to spend my money, and I'm trying to figure out, do I want to go cover the winter meetings, or if I want to go to spring training, you're like, go to spring training.
Yeah, I would be nervous about the winter meetings thing. I was talking to one of my colleagues last week about that, and I think he was saying Andrew McCutchen was really the only signing that made an impact that we covered last year at the winter meeting. So it just has not had the same impact and appeal for teams and players as it has in the past.
That's Chris Zwick. He is one of the Baseball Writers Association of America writers. He also writes for Yahoo Sports, and he writes about a lot of different things. I've been flipping through a lot of your articles since we've started to get to know each other, Chris. I've enjoyed it when you even the wrestling thing. Like when you get into the wrestling stuff, I'm like, I want to hear more from Chris about wrestling. So really appreciate you coming on the program and sharing your thoughts with us.
Of course, and I'll be glad to talk wrestling, though I haven't watched it since I was about 15. So if you want to reminisce about Stone Cold, The Rock, and the People's Elbow, I'm all for that one day.
Yeah, I got myself caught watching Walking Tall with The Rock for about an hour today until I realized I was watching Walking Tall with The Rock for an hour, and I said, "What am I doing?" Yeah, I get sucked in every once in a while. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Anytime you need me.
Hey, this is Acoustic Mike from Broadcast Basement, and you're listening to Sox in the Basement with Chris and his buddy Dave. I did the Broadcast Basement with Chris for 10 years, and nobody gave me a show. I'd leave if I had anything else to do with my life.
Remember, the Broadcast Basement is available everywhere podcasts can be found and always at broadcastbasement.com.
Chris Zwick had an amazing tweet, which Sox in the Basement shared, by the way. And I laughed out loud when I read this, and it got me thinking. But anyway, here's the tweet. How to prepare for the White Sox in the offseason. Step 1, think of your ideal, realistic solution at each position. Step 2, look at free agent rankings at that position and lower your expectations by about 5 players. Step 3, there's your guy. Now, you also have
This is exactly true with the Castellanos thing,
Yes.
because if I follow my
Yes.
list of free agents in the outfield, Castellanos becomes the guy that they're targeting,
So
following Chris Zwick's theory.
So, Chris, here's the thing. This got me thinking a little bit because what we have in our lifetime as White Sox fans experienced with White Sox free agency, you know how the Statue of Liberty says, give me you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor when you first walk up to
Yeah.
it? The White Sox motto for free agency should be like that, but give me you're old, you're broken, you're bad. Because that's what you're going to get
You're
every
a
offseason.
flash in the pan free agent that doesn't pan out because
Exactly.
that was his big year. You're chasing his stats. You're not actually getting them.
So I went to, just for fun, after I saw that Chris Zwick post, I went to MLB.com, and I'm going to throw some predictions at you as far as who's going to be patrolling right field, DH, and I got some really fun starting pitchers for you that would be so White Sox
Ladies
if
and
we
gentlemen,
sign them.
Negative Dave's 2020 White Sox free agent list. All right, Negative Dave.
So first of all, we're going to do what Chris Zwick says. We're going to go down about 5 players. So I'm looking at right fielders right now. We're going to go down about 5 players. So we have said that reasonable options out there would be Nicholas Castellanos or Cole Calhoun. Those are the names that we have been, that we've been hearing. So I went down about 5 players. I was like, well, they're probably going to make token offers to those guys, which will probably get turned down just so they can tell the fan base, well, we went after Castellanos and Calhoun and you Twitter folk ruined all of it for us, right? So that's going to happen.
It was that damn Sox in the Basement podcast with their negativity.
Would have got away with it if not for those damn Sox in the Basement podcast Twitters.
Those 2 buddies sitting at their bar on the south side with a couple of microphones. They got it. They screwed it all up.
Now, realize this. I'm going to add something to Chris Zwick's list. Cross out anybody who's under the age of 32.
Okay.
Cross out anybody under the age of 32. Chris, I have got our guy.
Okay, who's our guy?
Matt Joyce in right field.
He's not going to go get Matt Joyce.
Matt Joyce,
Oh,
you are
you see,
starting right fielder.
See, this is where you start to sound ridiculous. They'll do better than that. At worst, they're getting Corey Dickerson in right field. That's their worst case scenario. I do think that they will pursue Castellanos and either overpay for him or not get him. And it'll be Cole Calhoun or Corey Dickerson as the consolation prize.
Chris,
They're not going to
Matt
go after
Joyce,
Ozuna.
Matt Joyce is 35.
All right.
He's right up Kenny
All right.
Williams'
All
alley.
right.
He was great once.
Fine,
you know what
fine.
else? He bats lefty.
Find me negative.
He bats lefty, Chris.
Find me negative Dave's starting pitcher that they're going after.
Well, there was a couple of them. First of all, I want to talk DH.
Oh, okay.
So
I forgot about negative Dave's
because
DH.
the DH list, The list of designated hitters
Just
is
some
pretty
herbal
awesome.
tea and like just some alone time. Maybe you'd feel better.
You like you some Kendrys Morales?
Is he still alive?
Yeah, he's still alive. 37, dude. I bet you any money. He's not a lefty. He's a switch hitter. Starting DH for your 2020 Chicago White Sox, ladies and gentlemen, Kendrys Morales.
They're not gonna. You see, that's the thing. You're way too negative. They're going to go and sign people. They may not be the people you want, but they're going.
Kendrys Morales is people. Matt Joyce is people.
Let me let you in on a little inside thing. That's really just some smoke. But where there's smoke, sometimes there's fire.
Oh boy!
Over the past week, I've been exchanging some messages with Nick Hostetler of the White Sox. Okay,
this is good.
And I'm not going to get into details about the messages we've been exchanging back and forth, but we really like Nick. We talked about it before on the show. We liked what he did with his scouting. We liked what the White Sox have done in terms of what they're doing in the draft. We've had James Fox on who agreed with us on that. We really like the move where he became an assistant to the GM because we believe that the White Sox don't fire people. And pro scouting needs some help now if they're going to actually go out and get people. So we're of the ilk that Nick Hostetler is going to be heavily involved in figuring out which guys the White Sox should be pursuing in free agency this year. I wanted to talk to him, and I asked him to come on the show, and, he wrote a very nice thing back and said he wasn't going to be able to do it, and I kind of took it as like a rejection letter, which I was kind of annoyed with. And then I wrote him back, I'm like, I hope you consider us, blah, blah, blah. And he basically wrote back, he knows who we are. He thinks we're doing great. And he will come on the show.
Okay.
But now is not the time. And the way he kind of explained it, because I don't have it sitting in front of me and I don't want to quote what he's saying, I get the feeling that he's knee deep in stuff and he doesn't want to give away anything about what the Sox are doing. Chris Zwick is of the belief that the White Sox really don't like to give up things. And that was an anomaly last year when they screwed up more than the regular thing. They're not as tight-lipped as the Astros, but they also try their hardest not to give out things. And I think Hostetler, in his new position, may also be almost leading that charge, like, hey, shut up. Now, he can't shut Williams up.
No.
Williams is like that kid, like the smartest thing they could do is say, hey, Kenny, our plan is JD Martinez. We're going to make a deal for him, okay? And you focus on that, Kenny. And then let Kenny go on that wild goose chase, and they never go after JD Martinez. But give him that to talk about while the big boys do the work over here.
Okay.
That's what I kind of hope is going on. But that was my feeling is after exchanging messages with him, things are happening. He doesn't want to come on and us ask him a question and him get kind of trapped into giving something
Understood.
away. Because you know how we kind of pick things apart to try to figure out what people are really saying? He probably doesn't want to do an interview with us, and then we sit there for a few minutes and go, I think this is what he's saying, and we nail it. So he's waiting on us.
I didn't get to starting pitchers. Now, there are a lot of starting pitchers that are on the market. Many of which some of which are just not very realistic options for the White Sox, nor would they spend up the money or the years to get them. But I got a few names here for you that I'm thinking you probably would see in a White Sox uniform. You got Cole Hamels down here at 36 years old.
He's already said he wants to go to a contender that can make it to the playoffs.
All right, well then
so
scratch
I think
him out.
he'll scratch the Sox because we haven't proven anything yet with that.
You got some Gio Gonzalez, Chris. How about
Gio
that?
Gonzalez would be a viable fourth starter for this team. Some people have included him when they call us up and give us their offseason plans as one of the guys the White Sox could go out and get on the cheap and add into that rotation while we're trying to figure out what's going on with Lopez.
How about some Clay Buchholz, Chris? You want some Clay Buchholz?
He's still alive? No.
Yes.
Hey,
man, Coop can fix him. Coop can fix all these guys.
All you need to do is teach him a cutter.
No, but here's the thing. Here's the Chris, here is the one. Here's the one that I guarantee you, if Kenny Williams has any say-so in this whatsoever, you will see in a White Sox uniform in 2020. Drum roll, please. Felix Hernandez.
Remember, 708-459-8406 is the number you can call if you ever want to leave us a message. You can follow us on social media at Sox in the Basement. On Twitter, there's the Sox in the Basement Instagram. There is Sox in the Basement, a Facebook page. Follow all those things, but most importantly, make sure you subscribe to the show. Some fun stuff going on this offseason, including our new weekend interview series. From time to time when we have a guest on, there is an extended portion of the interview where we do a deep dive. There's a lot of stuff that Chris Zwick and myself talked about, and that will all be out, the complete interview, on Saturday on the Sox in the Basement podcast feed. So make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss it. There's more Chris Zwick
So
for
it's
you.
a bonus show.
Yes, we're going to do that in the offseason. I said
That's
we were going to do that.
awesome.
So on Saturday on the exact same feed, you're going to get the entirety of that interview. So you'll hear the little bit that we put on this show, plus much, much more with Chris Zwick, BBWAA writer for Yahoo Sports. He is going to be on there, so make sure that you are subscribed. That's Dave. I'm Chris. He has no hope. I have some hope. He's probably not getting Disney Plus to watch The Mandalorian because he hates Star Wars.
No, I am actually.
Okay, I am going to watch The Mandalorian.
Well, the problem I'm having is I'm not sure if it's available yet for Samsung Smart TVs, which is what I have.
Oh, well, then
So
you're screwed then.
I'm going to have to
Available on PlayStation 4.
when I go home. Yeah, but I'm getting a PS5 next year when it comes out.
You're going to wait a whole year, huh?
I am going to wait. Well, no, but I mean, if Disney Plus isn't available for Samsung, I'll just go pop for $50 Roku. No big deal. But I'm kind of waiting to see what they do there. So, but yeah, no,
I like how you
dude,
spend your money.
listen,
like $50 Roku.
Dave,
no big deal.
Dave Filoni, man, he's running the show. It's on Star Wars TV, so I'm excited about that. So yes, I will be watching. What I won't be watching, MLB Network for White Sox free agent news, because ain't nothing gonna happen. Matt Joyce, book it.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.